Today I will tell you a story that began with fire. A fire that did not only consume walls and beams, but also tore through the life I thought was secure. My villa by Lake Travis, the place I had called home for more than 3 decades, was lost in the flames. I escaped with little more than smoke in my lungs and a small wooden box pressed to my chest. Inside that box were fragments of my life: a wedding photograph, my husband's old watch, my mother's pearl necklace. Everything else was swallowed by the inferno. It happened on a summer night when the storm rolled over Austin without warning. Thunder shook the windows, lightning lit up the water outside, and the rain came hard and fast. Inside, I was making tea, wrapped in the sweater my late husband Richard had loved, when the lights flickered. At first, I dismissed it. The villa had weathered dozens of storms. It had always stood strong. Then I smelled it. Acrid, sharp, unmistakable. Burning wire. I rushed toward the study and saw the outlet sputtering with sparks. In a heartbeat, the wallpaper caught fire. The flames climbed quickly, racing across the wooden walls as though the house itself had been waiting for this moment to ignite. I grabbed the extinguisher, but the fire hissed back, greedy and relentless. Heat pressed against me from all sides, and smoke clawed at my throat. My hands trembled as I pulled the wooden box from the bedroom shelf, shoving in the only things I could think of. I wanted to save more, but the crack of splitting beams told me I was out of time. When I stumbled into the storm, rain lashed across my face, but it could not quench the fire behind me. I turned and saw the roof collapse in on itself. The villa, my anchor since Richard's death 8 years earlier, was no more. The place where we had painted the walls together, planted roses in the yard, and raised our children. It had become nothing but smoke and ash. The sound of it breaking was unbearable. Wood groaned and snapped, glass shattered, metal screamed. My neighbors gathered at a distance under umbrellas, their faces lit by the orange glow. Someone had called the fire department, but when the trucks arrived, there was nothing left to save. All they could do was contain the blaze, making sure it didn't spread to other homes. I stood barefoot in the driveway, clutching the box tighter as if it could shield me from the truth. 30 years of a life well lived, and now nothing but embers drifting into the night sky. When the fire finally died down, the silence was worse than the roar of flames. I felt stripped bare, as if the storm had taken not just my house but my very identity. I whispered to Richard's memory, "I am sorry. I could not protect it." A firefighter put a hand on my shoulder and told me I was lucky to be alive. I nodded, but inside I felt hollow. How lucky is a woman who has lost the only place that ever felt like hers? That night, my neighbor offered me a blanket and a corner of her porch. I sat there until dawn, staring across the street at the charred ruins, watching the smoke curl upward like the last breath of my old life. My heart was heavy, but my mind was clear. I could not stay there. I needed to go somewhere, to someone who would not let me face this alone. At that moment, I believed the fire was the worst thing that could happen to me. But as I would soon discover, the real devastation was not in the flames. It was still waiting for me, far away from the ashes. The morning after the fire, I drove east toward Dallas. My villa was nothing but rubble, and I carried my life in one small wooden box resting on the passenger seat. As the highway stretched ahead, I told myself this was temporary. My daughter Rachel would open her door. She would remind me that family mattered more than anything. That was the thought that kept me steady while the ashes of my home still clung to my hair. When I pulled into her neighborhood, everything looked staged for a glossy magazine. Trimmed hedges, perfect driveways, identical houses lined up as if perfection itself had been built into the concrete. I parked in front of Rachel's 2-story home with its polished shutters and bright red door. My heart pounded as I carried the box to the porch. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door opened. Rachel stood there in crisp slacks and a blouse that looked expensive. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a knot that probably took her half an hour to make look effortless. For a moment I saw my little girl in her, but then her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Mom," she said, her voice flat, "what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Daniel appeared behind her. He wore a gray suit even though it was Saturday, his jaw set like stone. His eyes skimmed over me, then dropped to the box in my arms. He didn't smile. "I came because the fire took everything," I said quickly. "I thought—" Rachel cut me off with a tight smile. "Mom, I love you, but our family needs privacy. Daniel thinks it would be better if you stayed at a hotel for a while." Her words hit like cold water. My chest tightened, but I stayed rooted on the porch. Daniel's voice followed, low and controlled. "We'll cover the cost. It's more comfortable for everyone that way." I blinked. "I lost my home yesterday. I have nowhere else, just for a short time until the insurance clears. I could help with meals, with laundry. You won't even notice I'm here." Rachel shifted uncomfortably but didn't step aside. "Mom, it's not about you being a burden. It's about space. We're trying to find our rhythm as a couple, and having you here would complicate things." Her words burned deeper than the flames that had destroyed my villa. Daniel's eyes hardened. "You'll have your independence, and we'll have ours. That's best for everyone." I looked down at the box in my arms, the edges pressing into my skin. The weight of it was nothing compared to the weight pressing against my chest. I had spent nights walking the floor when Rachel had fevers, holding her through heartbreaks, cheering her on through graduations, and now I was standing on her doorstep, not allowed to step inside. "Rachel," I whispered, "I'm your mother." Her voice softened, but only in tone, not in meaning. "I know, and that's why I'm saying this now. I don't want us to resent each other." Daniel reached forward and gently closed the door a few inches, signaling the end of the conversation. "We'll transfer money for the hotel today. Take care, Linda." I froze on the threshold, the red door inches from my face. My knuckles whitened around the box. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My daughter's house stood tall and spotless behind that door, and I stood outside in clothes that smelled of smoke, carrying the remains of my life. I finally stepped back, my legs shaking. The sun glared down, making the perfect lawns shimmer, while sweat and ash clung to my skin. I felt like an intruder in the world my daughter now called home. Neighbors passed by, glancing but saying nothing. Their eyes moved over me as if I were a stain on the postcard street. I walked back to my car in silence, opened the door, and placed the wooden box on the seat with trembling hands. I sat there, the air thick and suffocating, my mind replaying her words. Privacy, independence, boundaries, as if blood meant nothing, as if my presence were something to be managed like clutter to be stored away. I gripped the steering wheel, anger simmering beneath the shock. I had faced fire without collapsing, but standing at my daughter's door, hearing her tell me I wasn't wanted, that nearly broke me. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Instead, I stared straight ahead, my jaw tight, my pulse pounding in my ears. The house loomed in the mirror as I started the car, but I didn't look back. That was the moment I understood. The flames had destroyed my villa, but rejection had destroyed something deeper. I thought the fire had taken everything. I was wrong. The real loss came when my daughter refused to let me in. Daniel pressed a few folded bills into my hand before closing the red door behind me. I stood on the porch for a moment, stunned at how easily he dismissed me. I counted the money later in my car, $250, enough to cover a handful of nights, maybe a week if I stretched it. That was the price of my dignity in his eyes. I drove aimlessly down the freeway until the neon lights of a roadside motel caught my attention. The sign flickered in red and blue, vacancy, weekly rates, cheap. I pulled into the cracked parking lot, the smell of fried food drifting from a diner next door. A bored clerk slid a registration card toward me. I signed my name with shaking hands, slipped him some of Daniel's money, and was given a brass key attached to a worn plastic tag. The room was small, the carpet stained, the air heavy with the scent of bleach barely covering cigarette smoke. The curtains sagged. The bedspread was patterned with faded flowers, thin enough to see the stuffing beneath. I set the wooden box down on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. My body ached from exhaustion, but my mind was alert, sharp with realization. I wasn't a guest here. I was a refugee. I looked around and said aloud, steady and clear, "I am not begging. I only need a roof over my head." The walls didn't answer, but speaking the words grounded me. The television in the corner hummed when I turned it on. Local news covered the fire near Lake Travis. My villa flashed across the screen, now a pile of smoking rubble. The reporter's voice was casual, detached. To them, it was just another story. To me, it was my life. I turned the set off and sat in silence. The days at the motel passed quickly, each one blurring into the next. I woke with the sun pouring through thin curtains, stretched my aching back, and drank lukewarm coffee from a styrofoam cup in the lobby. I walked to the diner across the street for meals, counting every dollar, tipping only in coins. At night, I listened to the muffled arguments of strangers in the next room, footsteps pounding down the hallway, doors slamming. It was survival, nothing more. One evening, as I sorted the bills Daniel had given me, reality sank in. The money was almost gone. The clerk slid the next invoice under my door, the numbers circled in red ink. $85 for 3 nights. I had less than $100 left in my wallet. I stared at the bills in my hand, my pulse quickening. My savings, my insurance, none of it was accessible yet. I had nothing else to fall back on. The truth was clear. The room that gave me temporary shelter would soon spit me out onto the street. I walked to the diner, ordered the cheapest meal on the menu, and pushed the food around my plate while the waitress refilled my coffee. The neon sign buzzed above me, and I realized how far I had fallen. Not in pride, I had always lived simply, but in the way the world now looked at me. Disposable, a woman carrying a wooden box, and nothing more. That night I sat on the bed, the box beside me, and whispered to the photograph of Richard. "You would have fought for me. You would have never let them close that door." My voice cracked, but I steadied it. Tears would solve nothing. The next morning, I handed the clerk the last of the bills for 3 more nights. He didn't even look at me as he took the money. I carried the receipt back to my room, folded it into the box, and sat down. 3 nights. That was all I had left. I paced the small room, calculating, planning. I could sell the necklace my mother had given me. I could pawn Richard's watch. The thought cut deep, but the alternative was worse. Sleeping in my car, facing the world with no roof at all. I pressed my palms to the worn nightstand and stared at myself in the cracked mirror. The reflection wasn't pitiful. It was determined. I had survived the fire. I had survived rejection. I would survive this too. But survival came with a cruel truth. Daniel's money was gone, and with it my place in the motel. The cheap shelter had given me a pause, nothing more. Now the pause was ending. When the final morning arrived, I placed the key on the counter in the lobby. The clerk didn't look up. I walked out with the box clutched tight and the sun glaring down. My car waited in the lot, my only remaining shelter. The fire had destroyed my house. My daughter had closed her door. And now the cheap motel had spit me back out into the world. I stood in that parking lot with $93 in my purse, 3 garbage bags of smoke-stained clothes in the trunk, and a heart hardened by truth. I thought the flames had been the cruelest thing I would ever face, but cruelty comes in layers. And as I slid into the driver's seat, I understood. This was only the beginning. When the motel money ran out, I folded the last receipt into the wooden box and carried my things to the car. The parking lot was empty at dawn, the neon sign buzzing above me like a cruel reminder. I slid behind the wheel and realized the truth. This car was no longer transportation. It was my home. That first night I parked behind a Walmart, where the lights stayed bright and people came and went even after midnight. I reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go and pulled Richard's sweater around me. The smell of smoke still clung to it, but it was the only comfort I had. The air was cold, even in summer. My knees ached from curling them against the steering wheel. Each time headlights swept across the lot, I sat up straight, pretending I was just waiting for someone, but no one came. At 2 a.m, I reached into the box and pulled out our wedding photo. Richard in his dark suit, me in my white dress, both of us young enough to believe in forever. I held the photo against my chest, staring at the cracked ceiling of the car. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. By sunrise, my body was stiff, my back screaming. I walked into the store, head down, and found the restroom. I splashed water on my face, brushed my teeth, and avoided the mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger. The next night, I drove to another lot, near a gas station. I didn't want the same security guard to notice me twice. I bought a small coffee, just enough to justify using their bathroom. The cashier's eyes lingered on me, and I knew she saw what I was trying to hide. I sat in the car, sipping coffee gone cold, whispering to myself, "This is temporary, just a few nights. I will figure it out." But nights turned into a pattern. Park, pretend, hide. The box never left the passenger seat. Sometimes I opened it and laid the necklace across my palm. Sometimes I touched Richard's watch, feeling the weight of time I could no longer control. One evening, rain hammered down as I parked near another Walmart. Thunder rattled the windows. I pulled the sweater tighter and tried to steady my breathing. My eyes drifted to the photograph again, Richard smiling at me as if he knew I could endure anything. I pressed my forehead to the glass, whispering, "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to survive this." Sleep came in broken pieces. My head snapped forward each time a car door slammed nearby. My heart raced at every knock of thunder, every flash of headlights. On the fourth night, as I adjusted the blanket across my legs, a flashlight beam cut through the window. I froze. The knock on the glass was sharp. I rolled it down halfway, my throat tight. A security guard leaned closer, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. His eyes narrowed as he studied me. "Ma'am, do you have a home?" The question sliced through me. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. The shame pressed harder than the storm outside. My lips trembled, but I forced myself to speak. "I'm just resting. I'll be gone soon." He tilted his head, unconvinced. "You've been here a while. People notice. This isn't a safe place to sleep." I wanted to vanish. My chest burned with humiliation. The words I wanted to shout. I had a home, I raised a family, I gave everything, stayed locked in my throat. Instead, I nodded. "I'll move along." The guard stepped back, still watching. His flashlight cut across the box on the seat, the smoke-stained clothes piled in the back. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. His silence carried the truth. He saw me as a woman who had nothing. I turned the key, the engine coughing to life. As I drove out of the lot, the rain blurred the windshield. My hands shook on the steering wheel. The humiliation stung deeper than fire. I pulled into another empty lot miles away, parked beneath a broken streetlight, and leaned against the seat. My whole body trembled. I whispered through clenched teeth, "I am not defeated. I will not break here." But as the night closed in, I clutched Richard's sweater and stared at his photograph, praying for strength. My world had shrunk to 4 metal doors and a steering wheel. Each breath fogged the glass. Each second stretched longer than the last. The fire had stripped me of my home. Rachel's rejection had stripped me of belonging. And now, in the silence of my car, the question of the guard echoed louder than the storm. "Do you have a home?" I gripped the box tighter and answered inside myself, steady, unyielding. "Not yet. But I will." The nights in the car grew colder, even though summer still lingered. I wrapped myself in Richard's sweater, curled tight against the steering wheel, and willed my body not to shiver. Sleep came in fragments, broken by headlights and the distant rumble of trucks. Each morning I drove to a new parking lot, hoping to avoid questions, hoping not to be seen. But the guard's words followed me everywhere. "Do you have a home?" One evening, as I dug through the wooden box on the passenger seat, I noticed something wedged between photographs. A piece of paper browned by time, its edges curled. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. It was an old business card. Michael Reed. The name hit me like a strike of lightning. My first love. My high school sweetheart. A man who had once promised me the world before life pulled us in different directions. I stared at the faded ink, the smudged phone number barely legible after years in storage. I hadn't seen him in 50 years. For decades, I told myself that part of my life was sealed away, buried under marriage, children, and responsibility. Yet here his name was, staring back at me when I had nothing else. I pressed the card to my chest, whispering, "Why now?" For days I kept it close, but did nothing. I told myself it was foolish. What could a man from my past possibly do for me now? Besides, I wasn't the girl he once knew. I was 67, worn down by fire, rejection, and sleepless nights in a car. Why should I drag him into this wreckage? Still, the thought lingered. When the nights grew unbearable, when the sound of rain on the roof of my car felt like knives against my skin, my hand drifted toward the card. I tried calling other people first, old friends from Austin, former colleagues, even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. Every call ended the same: disconnected numbers, strangers picking up, or silence after the ring. The world I thought I could lean on was gone. On the fifth night, I sat in the driver's seat parked behind a gas station. My breath fogged the glass. The temperature had dropped, and the blanket I'd found in the trunk barely covered my legs. My body ached from nights without a real bed. Hunger gnawed at my stomach, but I ignored it. I pulled the card out again, the edges soft under my thumb. The number was faded, but still readable. My hands shook. What if he didn't remember me? What if he was dead? What if someone else answered and laughed at the idea that a woman like me still clung to the past? I whispered to Richard's photograph, "You would tell me to be strong, to try, to stop waiting for rescue and reach for it." My finger hovered over the numbers on my phone. I told myself no, then yes, then no again. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break free from my chest. The cold cut deeper. The loneliness pressed harder. And finally, with no other choice left, I dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Each second stretched like a lifetime. Then a voice answered, deep and steady. "This is Michael." I froze. 50 years vanished in that moment. I saw him as a young man, leaning against his car after football practice, smiling at me like I was the only girl in the world. My throat closed. "Michael," I whispered, my voice shaking. It's Linda Harper." There was silence on the line. My heart sank. I thought he'd forgotten, thought my name was nothing more than a scrap of the past he'd long since thrown away. But then, after what felt like forever, he spoke. His voice was lower now, older, but filled with something I recognized instantly. "Linda, where are you?" The tears I had been holding back for weeks welled up, but I swallowed them down. "I'm in Dallas. Things are difficult." His answer came without hesitation, sharp and unwavering. "I'll come now." 3 words. That was all. But they cracked something inside me that the fire and the rejection had not. For the first time since the flames destroyed my villa, for the first time since my daughter turned me away, I felt the weight lift from my chest. I sat in my car, clutching the phone, staring at the card that had survived fire and decades, wondering if this was fate or desperation. Maybe both. All I knew was that hope had found me again on the coldest night when I thought I had no one left. The motel had pushed me out. The car had trapped me in shame. But that card had given me a voice from the past, and his 3 words cut through the darkness. "This is Michael." The sound of his voice stopped time. My hand clutched the phone so tight it hurt, my breath locked in my chest. For a moment, I could not speak. 50 years collapsed into that single second, dragging me back to high school hallways, Friday night football games, and the way his eyes once found me in a crowded room as if no one else mattered. "It's Linda Harper," I finally whispered. My voice cracked, raw with hesitation. Silence filled the line. It was long, heavy, almost unbearable. I thought maybe he didn't remember. Maybe the years had erased me from his memory the way fire had erased my villa. I nearly hung up, shame boiling in my chest. Then he said it, steady, certain, 3 words. "I'll come now." The phone shook in my hand. My heart slammed against my ribs, stronger than it had in weeks. After the fire, after the rejection, After nights sleeping in a car, those 3 words were like a light slicing through the dark. I forced myself to breathe. "Michael, you don't even know." He cut me off, firm but calm. "I don't need to know. Tell me where you are." I looked around at the gas station parking lot where I'd parked to make the call. Neon lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the cracked asphalt. My car was dirty, filled with the smell of stale smoke and exhaustion. I felt ashamed to let him see me like this, reduced to nothing but a woman surviving out of a trunk. "Dallas," I said at last, my voice low. "I'm in Dallas, near a gas station on Route 75. He didn't hesitate. "Stay there. I'm leaving now." I opened my mouth to argue, but the line went dead. He had already decided. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. My pulse raced, my mind spinning. Michael Reed, the boy I loved before the world grew heavy, the man I thought I'd lost forever. And now, after 50 years, he was on his way. I stared at the old business card still resting in my lap. The edges were frayed, the ink faded, but it had survived fire and decades of dust. Maybe it had been waiting for this moment. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the cold pressing in on me. I didn't feel the humiliation of the Walmart guard's question. I didn't feel the sting of Rachel's rejection. I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in too long: hope. I leaned back in the seat and whispered, "Richard, forgive me, but maybe this is the help I need." Hours dragged slowly. The night deepened, traffic thinned, and silence settled around me. My eyelids grew heavy, but my heart refused to rest. Every set of headlights made me sit up. Every passing car made me wonder if it was him. Finally, a sleek black sedan pulled into the lot. The engine cut off, and the door opened. A tall man stepped out, his hair silver under the harsh light, his shoulders broad, his movements confident. I recognized him instantly. Time had etched lines on his face, but the presence was the same. He stopped a few feet from my car. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He simply looked at me, his eyes searching, as if to confirm that I was real. I opened the door and stood, my legs stiff from too many nights in the driver's seat. The air smelled of oil and rain-soaked pavement. "Michael," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. He smiled, faint but certain. "Linda." The way he said my name broke something open inside me. The years didn't matter. The fire didn't matter. The rejection didn't matter. In that moment, I wasn't a woman who had lost everything. I was simply someone he had come for. I exhaled, shaky but strong. "You didn't have to come." "I told you," he said firmly, stepping closer. "I'll come now." And I meant it. 3 words after 50 years. They lit a fire inside me that no storm, no betrayal, no humiliation could put out. I knew then that my story wasn't finished. Michael drove me out of that gas station lot as if there had been no hesitation, no question about it. The black sedan cut through the highway, rain streaking across the windshield, headlights carving a narrow path through the night. I sat in silence, clutching my wooden box on my lap, unsure of what to say after 50 years apart. His presence filled the car, steady, certain, the kind of certainty I hadn't felt since before the fire. He glanced at me once, briefly, then back to the road. "You haven't changed as much as you think." My lips parted, but no words came. I was 67, worn and weary, smoke still clinging to my clothes. Yet he said it like it was fact, not comfort. By dawn, we crossed into Houston. He turned into a quiet neighborhood where the houses sat farther apart, hidden behind large oak trees. His driveway stretched long and curved toward a 2-story brick house. When we pulled in, I saw the wide lawn, trimmed hedges, and tall windows. It looked like success carved into stone. Inside, the air was still. The house was spacious, elegant, but empty. No photographs on the mantel, no family portraits on the walls, just polished wood floors and furniture placed with precision. The silence echoed with every step. I set the wooden box on the coffee table, my voice low. It feels lonely. Michael loosened his tie, tossed it over a chair, and leaned against the doorway. His shoulders were broader now, his hair silver, but his eyes held the same intensity they had 50 years ago. It is. It's been lonely a long time. I looked at him, waiting for an explanation. He gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. I never married. People ask why, and I give them excuses. But the truth is simpler. He paused, steady, unwavering. No one ever replaced you, Linda. Not then, not now. No one. The words landed heavy, cutting straight through the shell I'd built around myself. I gripped the edge of the couch to steady my breath. After Richard, after children, after rejection, I never expected to hear something so raw. I forced a laugh, sharp but thin. 50 years, Michael. People don't wait that long. He stepped closer, his voice firm. I did. Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken memories. The girl I once was flickered in the back of my mind, but she was gone. What remained was a woman who had faced fire, humiliation, and betrayal. I wasn't sure what to do with his confession. I rose from the couch, walking to the tall window. Outside, the morning sun touched the lawn, but inside the house, it was shadowed. You don't know who I am anymore, I said, steady but cold. I know enough, he replied. I know you're the same woman who looked me in the eye in 1969 and made me believe I could be more than I was. And I know when I heard your voice last night, I realized that part of me had been waiting for that call all along. I turned to face him. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. He wasn't begging. He wasn't romanticizing the past. He was stating a fact. I shook my head. I lost my home, Michael. My daughter shut her door in my face. I've been sleeping in my car. Do you understand what that means? I'm not someone you rescue with old words. He didn't flinch. Then let me help you stand again. The steel in his tone disarmed me. He wasn't offering pity. He was offering ground, a place to plant my feet. I exhaled, heavy and uneven, before sitting back down. I don't know if I can let anyone that close again. Michael sat opposite me, his voice lower now. Then don't. Not yet. Just stay here. Rest. No one else needs to know. Consider this house your shelter until you decide what comes next. I looked around at the wide, empty rooms. It wasn't warmth, not yet, but it was shelter. For the first time since the fire, I wasn't calculating how many nights I had left. I pressed my palm against the wooden box. It had carried my past through fire and shame. Now it rested safely on a table in a house where silence no longer felt hostile. Michael leaned forward, his gaze fixed on me. Linda, I mean it. No one replaced you, and I don't want anyone to. 3 words had pulled me out of the dark the night before. Now his confession cut deeper. Not as a declaration of love, but as a reminder. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't invisible. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe without the weight of fear pressing against my chest. It didn't take long for word to travel. Houston may be a big city, but whispers move faster than highways. Somehow, Rachel learned that I wasn't sleeping in my car anymore. She heard I was staying in the home of a wealthy man, and not just any man, Michael Reed, my old flame. I didn't tell her. Someone else did. Neighbors talk. People connect dots when they see a black sedan parked too long in the wrong driveway. However it spread, by the end of the week, Rachel knew. She didn't call me directly. She called Michael's house. I answered, surprised to hear her voice. "Mom," she said sharply, skipping the greeting. "So this is what it comes down to? Losing your house and running to a man with money?" Her words stung, but I kept my tone even. "I ran from fire, Rachel, not to Michael. He offered me a roof when you wouldn't." She gave a dry laugh, bitter and cutting. "Of course he did. Mom always finds someone else to lean on. First Dad, then me, now him. You never learn to stand on your own." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. I had stood on my own through flames, through humiliation, through nights in a car. But Rachel refused to see it. Her voice dripped with cynicism, but underneath I caught the tremor. She was unsettled, jealous, maybe even afraid. "Rachel," I said slowly, "you turned me away. You told me I didn't belong in your home. Michael simply opened his door." Her silence lasted just a moment before Daniel's voice cut in, louder, firm. He had been listening. "Linda, we think it would be best if you came back with us. There are financial matters to settle. Insurance, estate papers, power of attorney. It will be easier if we handle it together." I could almost see his eyes calculating, his jaw clenched in that controlling way. He wasn't interested in me. He was interested in what the fire had left behind: money, property, leverage. "You want me back because of the insurance check," I said, my voice like steel. Daniel didn't even try to deny it. "Someone has to help you manage it. Do you really think a woman in your position can handle these decisions alone? Rachel and I can make sure everything is taken care of." Rachel finally spoke again, her words harsher than before. "You should be grateful we're willing to help after the way you embarrassed us. People are already talking. You staying with Michael makes you look desperate. If you come back and sign the papers, at least you'll have a place in this family again." Her cruelty was sharp, but beneath it I sensed panic. For years she had shaped her world into something polished and enviable. Me showing up with nothing but a burned-down villa, and then being taken in by a man she remembered as my first love. It threatened the perfect image she protected. I kept my voice steady, though inside my chest ached. "So this is what I am to you. A signature, a liability, not a mother." Daniel interrupted, impatient. "We'll drive down tomorrow. Have the papers ready." The line went dead before I could answer. I sat there in the quiet house, the phone heavy in my hand. Michael walked into the room, reading my face before I said a word. "They want me back," I told him. "Not for me, for control." He didn't look surprised. He poured 2 glasses of water and set one in front of me. "Linda, you know exactly what this is. They don't want you. They want what you represent." I sipped the water, my hands still trembling. "They'll bring papers. They'll try to corner me." Michael's voice hardened. "Then you don't sign. Not one page, not one line." I closed my eyes, his certainty cutting through my fear. Still, Rachel's words echoed in my ears. "You never learned to stand on your own." That was her lie. But I had a chance now to prove it false. By the time night fell, I was pacing the wide living room, rehearsing the confrontation in my mind. I wasn't going to let Rachel and Daniel dictate my worth. Tomorrow, they would find out the truth. I may have lost my villa to fire, but I hadn't lost myself. The rumor of Michael had rattled them. My survival without their help had unsettled them, and their desperation to seize the insurance money revealed more than they realized. I whispered to myself, steady and deliberate, "They want my signature. They'll never get it." Twist 7 had arrived. They were coming for me, not with kindness, but with contracts. And this time, I was ready. Rachel and Daniel arrived the next afternoon, pulling into Michael's long driveway with a kind of entitlement that made my stomach knot. Rachel stepped out first, her heels striking the stone path, her hair perfectly styled. Daniel followed, briefcase in hand, his expression sharpened like a blade. I stood by the doorway, my wooden box tucked safely under my arm. Michael remained a few steps behind me, calm but watchful. Rachel gave me a forced smile. "Mom, you look better. This place suits you." Her eyes scanned the high ceilings and polished furniture with thinly veiled judgment. She wasn't complimenting me. She was calculating. Daniel didn't waste time. He set the briefcase on the coffee table, snapped it open, and pulled out a stack of papers clipped together. "Linda, we've prepared the documents you need to sign so we can move forward with your insurance claim. It's complicated, but this will protect you." The papers landed in front of me with a heavy thud. I hesitated. My hand hovered above them. For a brief moment, exhaustion tugged at me. After everything, the fire, the car, the motel, I wanted to believe someone else could carry the burden. Rachel leaned closer, her voice soft but insistent. "Mom, just trust us. Sign it, and this nightmare can finally be behind you." I looked at her, my daughter, the child I once carried on my hip. I wanted to see sincerity, but her eyes flicked too quickly to Daniel. I picked up the pen. My fingers trembled. Before the tip touched the page, Michael's voice cut in, sharp and commanding. "Wait!" He stepped forward, snatched the papers from the table, and scanned the first page. His jaw tightened. "Linda, do not sign this." Daniel's face darkened. "Excuse me? This is private family business." Michael ignored him. He flipped through the pages, his eyes narrowing. "This isn't an insurance authorization. It's a transfer of property rights. It gives you full control, Daniel, over every asset Linda owns, including the land where her villa stood." I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand shook as I pulled it back from the pen. "What?" Daniel's tone turned smooth, almost mocking. "It's standard procedure. Legal language, nothing more. You wouldn't understand the technicalities." Michael's voice thundered. "Don't insult her intelligence. You tried to trick her into handing over everything she has left." Rachel's cheeks flushed, but her chin lifted defiantly. "Mom, you've always been terrible with money. We were just trying to protect you from making mistakes. If Daniel manages it, at least it stays in the family." I stared at her, betrayal searing through me. "By stealing it from me, that's protection?" Daniel snapped his briefcase shut, his mask of patience cracking. "Linda, you can't survive without us. You've been living off scraps, sleeping in a car. Do you want to spend the rest of your life like that? Or do you want stability?" Michael stepped closer, his presence towering. "She doesn't need your kind of stability. She needs the truth, and the truth is, you came here to rob her with a pen." I pressed my palm against the wooden box, grounding myself. My voice cut through the tension. "You looked me in the eye and expected me to sign away my life. You wanted me erased so you could profit from my ashes." Rachel's voice trembled, but her words stayed sharp. "You embarrassed me, Mother. Do you understand how it felt, neighbors whispering that my mother was staying with her old lover? Do you know how humiliating it is for me?" The words stung, but the clarity was brutal. Her anger wasn't about my suffering. It was about her image. Her obsession with appearances had hollowed her heart. Daniel grabbed the stack of papers from Michael's hand, stuffing them back into his briefcase. "This conversation is over. We'll be in touch when you're ready to act rationally." I straightened, my voice steady as steel. "No, this conversation is over because I see you clearly now. You came for signatures, not for me, and I will never sign." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Rachel's eyes darted to Michael, then back to me. Daniel's jaw clenched, his hands tightening on the handle of the briefcase. They turned and walked out without another word, their heels and footsteps echoing against the marble floor until the front door slammed shut. The house was quiet again, but not empty. Michael stood by my side, steady and sure. For the first time in days, I felt stronger than my fear. I whispered to myself, my voice calm, certain, and final. They will never get what they came for. It was the first time I had faced Daniel's deceit directly, the first time I had seen Rachel's mask slip completely, and the first time I realized that no matter how much fire had burned me, I still had the strength to stand. The next time Rachel came alone, she stood on Michael's porch in a fitted gray dress, her posture perfect, her lips trembling just enough to look human. I hesitated before letting her in. Something about her eyes warned me this wasn't a visit of reconciliation. We sat in Michael's living room, the sunlight streaming across polished wood floors. I folded my hands in my lap, steadying myself. Rachel didn't waste time. "Mom," she began, her voice fragile. "Why do you always make things so difficult?" I met her eyes. "Difficult? Rachel, you and Daniel tried to trick me into giving up everything I had left." Her composure cracked. Tears welled up, and her voice rose. "Do you even know what it's like to be your daughter? To grow up in that shabby villa while everyone else lived in real homes? I was embarrassed every time a friend came over. You never fit in. You never belonged in the world I was trying to build. The words sliced through me. I had expected anger, maybe manipulation, but shame? That was her fuel. I kept my voice calm, though my heart hammered. You were ashamed of me because I didn't measure up to some illusion of perfection? I worked 2 jobs to give you everything I could. I gave you stability when all I had was sacrifice. Rachel's tears rolled faster, but her tone sharpened. You don't understand. My life is built on appearances. Daniel's colleagues, my circle, they notice everything. And you ruin everything. Every time you show up, you remind people that I came from nothing. I felt the sting, but I held her gaze. Rachel, you came from love. That was never nothing. Her face hardened. The mask of tears slipped, replaced with cold calculation. If you sign the papers, at least you'll still have a place. You'll be part of this family in some way. If not, you'll have nothing. No home, no daughter, no legacy. The silence that followed was deafening. Her words hung in the air like poison. I drew a long breath. So this is what I mean to you. A signature. A name on a line that keeps your world polished. That's the price of being your mother. She flinched, but her chin lifted. Yes. If you won't cooperate, you'll be erased. And maybe that's for the best. Something inside me broke, but not in the way she intended. The years of compromise, of swallowing pain to keep peace, they ended in that moment. I felt clarity settle over me like steel. I rose to my feet. Rachel, I carried you into this world. I gave you life, but I will not give you my dignity. If erasing me makes you comfortable, then erase me. But know this, one day, when the polished walls crack, you will see the truth. And when that day comes, you'll remember that you chose appearances over blood. Her lips quivered, but she didn't reply. She turned sharply, heels clicking against the floor, and stormed out. The door slammed, leaving the house trembling in silence. Michael stepped from the hallway where he had been listening. His expression was grim but steady. He placed a hand on my shoulder. You didn't lose today, Linda. You won. You saw her clearly, and you didn't bow. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. For the first time since the fire, I felt both the weight of loss and the power of refusal. Rachel had revealed herself, not as a daughter seeking protection, but as a woman shackled by pride and fear of judgment. And I knew now, no amount of fire could destroy me as thoroughly as her words had tried. But I was still standing. Daniel showed up at Michael's house one evening without Rachel. His car screeched into the driveway, headlights cutting across the lawn. I knew before he even rang the bell that this was not a visit of peace. When I opened the door, he barged in, shoulders tense, face slick with sweat. His tie hung loose, and his eyes had the restless shine of desperation. He didn't even greet me. He dropped his briefcase onto the floor with a dull thud and said through clenched teeth, "We need to talk." Michael appeared in the hallway, his presence calm but guarded. Daniel waved him off. "This is between me and Linda." I crossed my arms, my voice steady. "Then say what you came to say." Daniel paced the living room like a caged animal. Finally, he spun toward me. "I'm drowning, Linda. Do you understand? Drowning in debt. I made investments that didn't work out. Deals that were supposed to double our fortune but collapsed instead. The house, the cars, Rachel's lifestyle, everything is crumbling." His voice cracked with frustration. "If you don't step in, if you don't help, this family will fall apart. Do you really want that on your conscience? Do you want to watch your daughter lose everything?" I held his gaze, letting his words hang. The silence pressed against him until he shifted uncomfortably. Finally, I spoke. "You want me to believe this is about family. But this isn't about Rachel. It's not about saving anyone. It's about your pride, your debts, your greed." His face twisted. "Greed? I built everything we have. The house, the cars, the social standing, none of it would exist without me. I took risks so Rachel could have the life she deserved, so you could stop embarrassing her with your small, pitiful existence." The insult stung, but it clarified everything. I straightened my shoulders. If you've lost everything, Daniel, it's because of your arrogance, not because of me, and I will not be your scapegoat. He slammed his fist against the coffee table, the sound echoing through the room. I'm giving you one last chance. Sign over the insurance money. With that, I can cover the debts and rebuild. Without it, we're finished. I looked him in the eye, my voice calm, deliberate, sharper than any blade. You were finished the moment you decided to gamble with your family's future. What you lose now is not my doing. It's your own. You will not drag me down with you. Michael stepped forward, his tone low and controlled. You've said enough, Daniel. Leave. Daniel sneered, his desperation boiling into fury. You think you've won, don't you, Linda? Living here in this mansion with your old flame, acting like you're above us. But I know the truth. Without us, you're nothing. A burden. A relic no one wants. I didn't flinch. No, Daniel. Without dignity, you are nothing. And that's what you've lost. His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might lunge at me. But then he grabbed his briefcase, stormed to the door, and slammed it so hard the windows rattled. The silence afterward was thick, but I felt lighter. The mask had fallen. Daniel's ambition, his greed, his desperation. They were no longer hidden behind smooth smiles and legal papers. He had shown himself plainly, and I had refused him. I sank into the chair, my hands steady, my breath even. Michael placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You did the only thing you could. You stood your ground. I nodded, my voice quiet but certain. He thinks I'll break. But he doesn't understand. I've already survived fire. I can survive him too. For the first time, I knew. Their threats, their manipulations, their pleas built on lies, they had no power over me anymore. Twist or not, I was no longer the woman who stood trembling on their doorstep. I was stronger, and they would never see me bend. Rachel returned 2 days later. She didn't knock gently this time. She pushed through the door with Daniel right behind her, both of them armed with papers and poisoned words. I sat waiting in Michael's living room, my wooden box resting beside me like a silent witness. Michael stood near the mantel, arms crossed, his presence steady. Rachel's voice cut the air first. Mom, let's stop pretending. You can't handle all this. The insurance money, the decisions, the future. You're letting other people control you. She shot a glance at Michael, her mouth tightening. This is about your family, not outsiders. Daniel placed the papers on the coffee table with a practiced thud. It's simple. Sign here and everything gets resolved. No more waiting, no more uncertainty. You get peace. We all get stability. I leaned forward, my eyes steady on theirs. My voice was firm, unshaken. I already lost my house to fire, but I did not lose my right to decide, and I will never sign those papers. Rachel's face reddened. Why are you doing this to me? To us? Don't you understand? People are talking. They say you've abandoned your family for some man who... I cut her off. My voice was sharper than hers. For the first time in my life, I am not abandoning myself. You wanted me erased, folded neatly into your perfect little world. But I won't do it. Not anymore. The room went still. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Rachel blinked at me, stunned. She had expected tears, excuses, hesitation, but not this. Michael stepped forward, his tone low but solid. You heard her. She will not be tricked again. No one gets to steal her voice. Not you, not Daniel, not anyone. Daniel sneered. This is madness. Do you want your mother wandering the streets again? Do you want her suffering? Because that's what will happen if she refuses us. I turned to him, my voice like steel. What happens now is on you. Your debts, your greed, your desperation, they are not mine to carry. If you lose everything, it's not because of me. It's because of who you chose to be. Rachel's voice cracked. Mom, if you sign, at least you'll still have a place in this family. I felt the twist of her words, the cruel bargain she tried to make. My answer was clear, loud, and final. No. The word echoed through the room like a gavel striking. One syllable, but it broke chains I had carried for years. Rachel's tears spilled, but they no longer softened me. They revealed the truth, that she was less afraid of my suffering and more afraid of losing control of her image. Daniel grabbed the papers, stuffing them back into his briefcase. His jaw was tight with rage. "You'll regret this," he hissed. I stood, my voice calm but powerful. "No, for the first time, I won't." Michael's hand brushed my shoulder, firm and protective. He looked directly at Rachel and Daniel. "Leave. This home is not for schemers. It's for those who know what love and loyalty mean. Clearly, that is not you." They left in silence, but their silence was heavier than any shouted curse. When the door shut behind them, I exhaled, my chest rising with something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. For decades, I had bent myself into shapes that made others comfortable, but in that moment, I reclaimed what the fire couldn't burn and what betrayal couldn't steal: my right to choose, my dignity, my will. And I knew, deep in my bones, that saying no was not the end of something. It was the beginning. The night after Rachel and Daniel stormed out, the house was still. Their silence lingered like smoke, but I felt no hatred, only a deep, steady calm. Hatred would have chained me to them. Calm set me free. I rose before sunrise and stepped onto Michael's porch. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and soil. I sat down in the wooden chair, the same one I had collapsed into days earlier when I first arrived broken and lost. This time, I sat tall, my hands folded in my lap, my back straight. The horizon began to pale, then flushed with streaks of orange and pink. The light crept across Michael's garden, touching the roses, the trimmed hedges, the wide lawn. It was as if the world itself wanted to remind me that no darkness, no betrayal, no fire lasted forever. Michael came out quietly, a mug of coffee in each hand. He handed me one without a word. We sat side by side, the silence between us warm rather than heavy. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Maybe the fire didn't just take your house," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "Maybe it burned away the weight of the past, making space for something new." I turned to look at him, his profile etched against the glowing sky. His words struck something deep inside me. For months, I had thought of the fire as an ending. But sitting there, dawn spilling across the earth, I realized it was also a beginning. "I thought I lost everything," I admitted. My voice was steady, not trembling. But maybe what I lost were the chains I never knew I was carrying, the illusion that I had to keep earning love that should have been unconditional. Michael's eyes softened, storm gray, but calm now. "You haven't lost yourself, Linda. That's what matters. You're stronger now than you've ever been, and this time you're not standing alone." I sipped the coffee, the warmth spreading through me. I thought of Rachel, of the bitterness in her words, of the hunger in Daniel's eyes. For years, I had twisted myself to keep them satisfied, to be less of an embarrassment, to prove I was worthy of their approval. But the fire had exposed the truth. I never owed them my dignity. The sun rose higher, flooding the porch with golden light. I set my mug down and let the warmth touch my face. "I don't hate them," I said quietly, "but I can't let them control me anymore. If they want to live in cages built of appearances and debts, that's their choice. Mine is to live free." Michael leaned back, his shoulders relaxing. That's the woman I always remembered. Strong, clear, unshakable. The word unshakable settled into me like armor. For the first time since the flames consumed my villa, I believed it. I thought back to the night I clutched my charred wooden box and watched my life collapse into ash. I had felt powerless then. Now, sitting in the first light of day, I understood that power was not in what I lost, but in what I chose to keep. My integrity, my voice, my right to decide who I was. Michael reached over and placed his hand over mine. It was a simple gesture, but it anchored me. "The past may have burned," he said, "but the future is yours to build, and you don't have to build it alone." The dawn stretched across the sky. brilliant and unstoppable. And I knew then that I was no longer the woman begging on the doorstep of her daughter's house, clutching bags of broken memories. I was someone new, tempered by fire, steadied by truth, ready for whatever came next. For the first time in a long time, I felt not just alive, I felt free. When the insurance check finally arrived, I held it in my hands not as a symbol of loss, but as a tool of rebuilding. The fire had taken my villa, my shelter, my comfort, but it had not taken my will. I looked at Michael across the table, his steady gaze reminding me that this moment was not about rescue, it was about choice. "I don't want to live in debt to anyone," I told him firmly. "Not to Rachel, not to Daniel, not even to you. If we build something, it will be as equals." Michael nodded. "Then we build together, on your terms." For the first time since the fire, I felt control flowing back into my hands. We drafted a plan. I would rebuild my home, not as a replica of what was lost, but as a new space shaped by strength, not fear. And with what remained, I would do something I had never dared before. I would create a fund to help others who had been through what I had survived. The idea came to me one evening as I sat flipping through the charred photographs from my wooden box. Images of birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, moments frozen in time, now edged with black. I thought of the countless families who had watched their lives go up in flames, their faces pressed against glass as everything crumbled. "I can't just rebuild for myself," I said to Michael. "I have to give back. If the fire was meant to strip me bare, then I'll use its ashes to lift someone else." So we started. Not grand gestures, not towering foundations, but one step at a time. I opened an account, added my share of the insurance, and Michael matched it with his own funds. We named it the Phoenix Fund, a symbol of rising from the ashes. When I made the first call to a local shelter that housed fire victims, my voice did not tremble. "My name is Linda Harper," I said, "and I know what it's like to lose everything. I want to help." The director hesitated. "Do you mean donations?" "Yes," I said, "but more than money. I want to be there, to listen, to share, to stand with them until they find their footing again." Michael drove me to the shelter the next day. The smell of smoke clung faintly to the clothes of the families waiting there. A little girl clutched a teddy bear, missing an ear. Her mother's eyes were hollow with exhaustion. I knelt beside them and said, "I lost my home too, but I promise you, this moment will not define your future." As the weeks passed, I found myself growing stronger with each visit. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a bridge. Families who thought no one understood saw in me proof that survival wasn't just possible. It could lead to renewal. Rachel called once during this time. Her voice was clipped, defensive. "People are saying you're parading around like some savior. Is that what this is now? Your new life?" I breathed deeply before answering. "Yes, it is my new life. Not built on shame, not on appearances, but on meaning. If that embarrasses you, then perhaps you should ask why." She hung up, and I didn't cry. Not this time. One evening, Michael and I stood in front of the cleared lot where my villa had once stood. The rubble was gone, the ground leveled. A blueprint lay rolled out on the hood of his truck. He spread it open and looked at me. "It's not just a house we're building. It's a testament to survival, to freedom, to you." I placed my hand on the paper, tracing the outline of walls and windows yet to exist. "No," I said softly, "to us, to anyone who refuses to let loss have the final word." In that moment, I realized the twist that fate had given me. I had gone from the woman cast out, clutching a burned box, to someone who could hand another person the key to start again. From weak to strong, from rejected to reborn, from needing help to giving it. The fire had not destroyed me, it had revealed me. And with every brick laid, every family touched by the Phoenix Fund, I knew my story was no longer about survival. It was about transformation. I was no longer just Linda Harper, the woman who lost a villa. I was Linda Harper, the woman who turned ashes into hope. I sit before the camera, the light catching the lines of my face, but leaving the rest in shadow. I don't hide from the truth anymore, but I don't parade it either. My voice is steady. It carries the weight of survival, not the tremor of fear. The fire took my home. I begin, my eyes fixed ahead, not on myself, but on those who will hear me. But it wasn't the flames that left the deepest scar. It was my daughter's words, sharp and cold, shutting her door in my face. That burned hotter than any blaze. I pause, not for pity, but for clarity. Still, fire does more than destroy. It clears the ground for new growth. In the ashes, I found myself again, stronger, clearer, and I found someone who had never truly left me, though decades had passed. The camera holds on me as I lean forward. My tone sharpens. If you're listening, know this. Losing everything doesn't mean you are nothing. You can rise from the ruins. You can say no to those who demean you. You can choose your own voice, your own path. I let the silence breathe, then add, I was cast out, dismissed, treated like a burden, but today I stand not as a victim, not as a beggar at the doorstep of my own blood. I stand as a woman who turned loss into power, who turned betrayal into freedom, who turned fire into light. The camera shifts, just enough to catch the small wooden frame on the table beside me. Inside it rests the old card, edges singed, but words still clear. Michael's name, his number, the relic that bridged 50 lost years. My voice softens, but it does not weaken. This card was nearly destroyed, but it survived. Like love itself, sometimes it doesn't vanish. It waits, patient, enduring, ready for the day you are strong enough to see it again. I take a breath, my words final, deliberate. The fire took my villa. My daughter's rejection seared my heart, but in the end, I found more than I lost. I found my dignity, my will, and a man who reminded me that love doesn't always fade. Sometimes it simply waits for its return. The last image lingers on the framed card resting on Michael's table, bathed in the glow of a setting sun. No tears, no regrets, just proof that from ashes a life can begin again and begin.